Nice to meet you. You must be Laura. This is Catherine Bradley. Thomas told me how to reach you. I hope you don't mind.
Nice to meet you too. You must be Thomas's mother. I'm Laura. I'm going out with your son. We've been seeing each other for about 2 years now.
Thomas did mention that you were going to visit me soon to talk about your engagement, your marital plans, but I couldn't wait that long, so I decided to message you on here. I do apologize for acting so hastily.
No worries, Mrs. Bradley. I understand. I'm sorry that I didn't message you beforehand. I should have been the one to contact you first.
The thing is, Laura, after we officially meet, I assume that will probably mean that your marriage to Thomas will be definite. That's why I wanted to chat to you a bit before our official meeting. Thomas being my only son, I've always been curious to know just what kind of lady he's been seeing. He speaks so highly of you, you know. Since my husband passed away, I felt extra protective of my son. I'm the only parent he's got.
I understand, of course you feel that way. I think it's only natural for you to be curious to know what kind of person your son is dating. I would be too if I were in your shoes.
May I ask you a couple of questions? You don't mind chatting with me for a while, do you? I'd love to know more about you, to get to know you properly.
Yes, of course. I'd be happy to answer your questions. Please, ask me anything.
Beginning with your educational background, I assume you must have at least a bachelor's degree?
Yes. I've actually graduated from Stanford University.
Oh, that's nice. An Ivy League college is impressive, I dare say. May I ask what your current occupation is precisely? Where do you work?
I work as a pharmacist at the pharmacy in Clinton Street. The one near Cucina, that nice little Italian restaurant.
Oh, yes, that place has been there as long as I can remember. I suppose it's one thing that you work somewhere I'm familiar with. A pharmacist. I hear that pharmacists don't get paid that well these days. Is that true? My uncle was a pharmacist, and he never seemed to have enough in his pocket. I want to ask you about your own finances. How much do you get paid? How much was your annual salary last year?
Well, I do think things have changed in the past few decades. As for the salary of pharmacist, it all depends on what sort of certifications you have and where you work. As for myself, I work in a pretty good environment, and my colleagues think quite highly of my skills. So I get paid a fairly good amount, at least for my age.
Oh, I see. I suppose that sounds acceptable. Let's go on to the next topic. I have much more I need to know about you. How about your dating history? What sort of people have you been going out with before you started dating my son? How many men have you gone out with in total? Oh dear, I'm sorry for being so nosy, but I have to make sure that my son's not marrying some slutty girl who's been partying around. I just want to make sure that Thomas has made the right choice and that he's marrying a good, nice girl.
Please wait a moment. I think it's... Yes, I've been out with 4 guys in total. That includes my boyfriend from when I was in high school.
How old did you say you were? 28 years old, was it? If your first boyfriend was a boy you dated in high school, so that's... around 1 boyfriend every 2 to 3 years? I suppose 4 is not too bad of a number for a 28-year-old. Besides, it's also worrying if you haven't dated enough people. You do need some dating experience, even for being a good wife. It's a difficult balance, but necessary.
Do you really think so? It never crossed my mind that the number of people somebody dates to be relevant to a good marriage.
Well, I definitely think it's relevant. I think it's better to have at least some experience, or you may have the urge to play around after you get married. That would be terrible and unacceptable. The worst thing that could happen is that you cheat on Thomas after you turn 30 years old. Then it'll be too late for Thomas to look for a new girl.
I suppose it's a valid concern.
I don't want Thomas to marry a slut, but I don't want him to marry someone inexperienced in relationships either.
Well, I'm glad you think I'm okay.
I've thought of something else I'd like to ask you. It's really important. Do you have any relatives who are unable to have children? Perhaps an aunt or a cousin of yours who was unable to become pregnant?
Well, I wouldn't be sure. Don't think there's anyone in my family like that.
Really? Could you ask your own mother about that? And also, please get checked up at a hospital to see if you are capable of bearing children. And go to a proper one, a proper university hospital with the best doctors. The biggest problem that could be is that you end up being infertile. An infertile woman is not a proper woman, if you ask me, unqualified to be anybody's wife.
Okay, I'll make sure to take a fertility test. Just out of curiosity, what will happen if it turns out that I'm unable to have children? Does it mean that
Then you'll have no choice but to break up with Thomas, I'm afraid. Fertility is the number one, utmost important criteria. It's out of the question for Thomas to marry a girl who's unable to have children.
Will I have to break up with Thomas even if he decides that he doesn't want children?
Yes, you still have to break up with them. That's the only way. I don't want him wasting time when he could be with a proper woman. There's a good possibility that he may change his mind and want children of his own in the future. He's going to be doomed if he's stuck with an infertile girl.
Oh, I see.
What does your mother think? Did she ever mention anything about when she was pregnant with you? Did she have any difficulty conceiving?
I've never talked to her about it, but no, she's never mentioned having trouble during or before her pregnancy. I have 4 siblings, so I doubt that my mother had any fertility problems.
Oh my, oh that's amazing! 5 children! Oh, perhaps you'll be lucky enough to have many children, just like your own mother.
I don't know about having 5 kids, but...
As long as you're capable, that's the important part. But please do take a proper fertility test before we meet. You can tell me the results over our meeting. Hello, Laura. I hope you're doing well. Have you gone to the hospital for your checkup yet?
Yes, I got a fertility test done. I just received my results this morning. There didn't seem to be any issue with my fertility. The doctor didn't find anything unusual.
Okay, then good. You're all set. I officially approve of you as Thomas's fiance. I look forward to meeting you soon. Now we can start arranging the dates for our first meetup. I'm relieved that you seem like a girl worthy to have my son.
Thank you, Mrs. Bradley. I'm glad you approve of me.
I've got an idea. How about we meet tomorrow?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Bradley. I'm afraid I've already made plans for tomorrow. How about next Saturday? Would that be okay with you?
Okay, then next Saturday it is. Let's meet up for lunch or dinner. I can ask you more questions when we meet up. By the way, what are these plans you say that you have for tomorrow? What do you usually do on your days off?
Tomorrow I'm going to go and see a play at a theater. I'm sorry I won't be able to meet you tomorrow. I would have loved to, but I've already bought tickets for this.
Well, that sounds nice. I like going to watch plays myself. I go to the theater quite often.
Thank you for understanding, Mrs. Bradley. Oh, what a coincidence. Going to watch plays and watching movies are 2 of my biggest hobbies. I've enjoyed going to see plays ever since I was a little girl.
It seems like we'll get along marvelously. What films have you watched recently?
Yesterday, I went to see a newly released rom-com after work. It's based on a manga by a Japanese writer. Have you heard of her? It was really funny. I'd recommend it. The play I'm going to go and see next week is also based on a manga too.
Based on a manga comic book? Oh, that seems a bit too childish for me. I don't watch that sort of plays or movies.
What type of movies and plays do you enjoy watching?
I don't like silly manga-based stories, nor do I like those cheap movies where they use these young, unseasoned actors. I'm all about classical theater. As for movies, I like ones with a good storyline, not some silly, childish, made-up story. Young actors these days, they just don't have the knack for brilliant acting. Some of my favorite actors are Brandon Herring and Sheena LeBron.
I see. They're both really famous actors from the 70s, aren't they?
They certainly are. They know what they're doing. They can act. But these new actors around your age, I'm always disappointed by their lack of charisma. Both of my favorites are a bit older than me, but boy, were they handsome and gorgeous when they were young. Even now that they're in their 70s, they still have that special spark about them. I particularly love Brandon Herring. I watch his old movies at least 3 times a week.
Wow, you're a real fan. Aren't Brandon and Sheena married to each other?
Wow, you know your stuff, don't you? Apparently their whole family is in show business.
Oh wow, I didn't know about that. I can't imagine what their lives are like. Their lives must be so different from what I'm used to.
Of course they live a different life. They're superstars. You should stop watching those juvenile manga-based movies and start watching proper movies. Movies that actually teach you something. Only stupid poor people watch such silly movies. Start with a film starring Brandon Herring. It'll do you good to watch what a real movie is like.
I think that's going a bit too far with your assumptions. There are many great films that are based on manga comic stories. Although there may be less drama, And the story may not be on the serious side. That doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
Young people these days, I bet they can only understand these light, happy-go-lucky movie types. They're too stupid to enjoy the beauty of real cinema with real class acting. The future of this country is bleak.
I think it's also important to understand what's in fashion and to understand what's popular in the moment. You don't have to talk down on these recent movies, especially when you haven't even watched them.
Wait a moment, what did you just say to me? Are you saying that I'm wrong? Remember your position. You're my son's fiance, and I am your future mother-in-law.
I didn't mean to say that you're wrong. I just thought it would be nice if you could be a bit more open to new culture.
But you just suggested that I was wrong. How big-headed and bossy of you. I'm extremely disappointed in you.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, Mrs. Bradley, I really am. It's just that I have my own favorite movies and plays, just like you have your favorites. I just couldn't stand you talking down on the genre of art I enjoy watching.
But I didn't say anything wrong. The movies and plays you watch, only uneducated people watch those sorts of genres. It just shows your level of intelligence and humanity.
Mrs. Bradley, could you please let me inside your house? I beg you. If you could just listen to me, I'll explain everything. Just give me another chance, please.
Oh, just leave. Get away from my house. I decided not to allow you to marry my son. If Thomas goes ahead and marries you, I am cutting all ties with him. You tell him that.
I apologize for speaking against you the other day. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, and I'll never do it again.
It's too late for you to apologize now. Now I know that you're the sort of girl to speak against her own mother-in-law. You don't even have enough intelligence or knowledge of culture whatsoever. You don't even watch proper movies. I bet you didn't get a proper education. What do you mean it's not true? You would be polite and you'd know how to act properly around your mother-in-law if you were brought up nicely with a proper education. I bet you were born into a poor family, too poor to pay for a decent education. I cannot allow my son to marry such a peasant. No way.
Please, stop assuming how I was brought up and what my family is like. Why do you overthink things like this far just because I like watching the new movies and new plays? I think you're the one who needs a wake-up call. You're living in your own bubble. You should know that not everybody is like you.
What did you say to me? How dare you?
You just automatically assume that people who don't like the same things as you have bad taste. Having a narrow perspective and being caught up in your own world won't do you any good, Mrs. Bradley. I think it's much more sophisticated to be able to enjoy and value a range of different genres of artistic works.
Wow, you're scolding me? Why do I have to listen to all this rubbish from you? I knew you weren't appropriate for my son. Never go near my son, ever again.
Mrs. Bradley, I'm sorry for yesterday. I went too far with my words. Since we both had some time to cool off, couldn't we meet one more time to talk things through? Thomas has asked me to see you and talk to you again.
No way. No thank you. I never want to see you ever again. You're uncultured, arrogant, and uneducated. I have nothing to talk to you about.
You're still on with that? Why don't we deal with this like adults? Even if you decide not to accept our marriage, we're still getting married. It's up to your son if he marries me.
I'll lock Thomas in my house if it means that I can prevent him from getting married to you.
You know that's impossible, don't you? He's not a child anymore. He's a fully grown adult. You can't just make decisions for him like that just because you don't like me. That's just selfish of you.
Selfish of me? All I'm doing is protecting my son. I'm not giving my son away to some girl who's unpolite and arrogant as you are. You began dating Thomas for his money, didn't you? I bet you hired an agent or something to check out how much he earns. I bet you also found out about his trust fund.
What the? For Thomas's money? What do you mean I'm after his money? That's nonsense.
A poor girl like you, I bet you don't even love him. You just want to get married so you have the right to his inheritance. The inheritance my husband left him. You're after his money and his assets. I won't let you.
My family is not poor. I didn't grow up in a poor household. How many times do I have to tell you to stop making such assumptions about me?
If you aren't poor, why do you act so immature and uneducated? It's because you don't have a proper education. That's the only explanation. I'd love to see your parents. I bet they're just as stupid and uneducated as you are.
You see them every single day, Mrs. Bradley.
I see who every day?
I said you see my parents every day. You said your favorite actor is Brandon Herring, and that you watch his movies and drama series almost every day. Brandon Herring and Sheena LeBron are my parents.
What the hell are you saying? Oh, such a ridiculous lie. How could you possibly be the daughter of such famous, prestigious people? The whole Herring family are in the show business anyway.
I'm the only one in my family that has a normal job. You should look it up on the internet. It says clearly that they have a daughter who lives outside of the spotlight. Also, I do have some acting experience in the past, but my childhood dream was always to do something within the medical field. So I decided to study and to live a different life from my family. I don't regret my own decision, not at all.
Lies! You aren't going to fool me. Why would I believe your silly, made-up story? If this is true, why didn't you tell me straight away? One of the first things I told you is I'm a massive Keith Haring fan.
I was going to surprise you when you get to meet my family. I was going to take my parents when I go and see you for our engagement lunch. I thought it would be a nice surprise for you to meet my parents. Not that you'll ever get to see them, not anymore. I'm not going to visit you or let you meet my parents.
Stop lying to me. You're being absurd. I can't believe the lies stupid people like you come up with. I am definitely not going to let you marry Thomas.
Why don't you ask your own son about it then? Go ahead. He's already met my parents to ask for my hand in marriage. Even if you don't listen to me, you'll believe it if you hear from your own son, won't you?
Laura, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry for the horrendous things I said to you. I can't believe you are, in fact, the daughter of Brandon Herring and Sheena LeBron. You must be delusional. Oh, this is crazy.
Do you finally believe me now?
My son showed me the pictures he took at your family's house with your mother and father. That was Brandon Herring and Sheena LeBron, no doubt about it. I wouldn't mistake them for anybody else.
I've already told my parents about all the things you said to me. They were shocked to hear what you said and surprised that somebody would say something as cruel and horrible as you did. The industry my parents are in is chaotic and tough, but even my parents who have gone through all that were surprised by how much you acted out on me.
I'm really sorry, Laura. I really mean it. I'm sorry. I'll apologize to your parents as well.
No thank you, Mrs. Bradley. I also talked to Thomas about what you did as we move forward with our lives. We're going to get married just as we planned in the first place, but you aren't invited to the wedding. We decided to cut all ties with you from here on.
What? Are you serious?
We're just going to keep in touch with our trusted relatives and our family. That doesn't include you, I'm afraid.
You're just going to leave me out of the loop? Thomas agreed to this?
He agreed to everything I just told you.
But why? Thomas wouldn't leave me all by myself. I'm his mother and his real family.
Thomas is a kind, good man, but I've heard that you treated him really badly over the years. You used to be so strict with Thomas that you lock him up in his room when he never did something you didn't approve of. You'd also punish him by breaking his belongings. I heard you even threw his phone and computer out just because he missed his curfew by a couple of minutes. I also heard that you bullied several of his past girlfriends over the years, and you forced him to break up with them.
It's only because his past girlfriends were horrible. I did it to protect my son.
It wasn't for you to decide who he dates, Mrs. Bradley. You've chased your own son away because of your own actions. It's your own fault.
So I'm going to be all alone now? After my husband passed away, all I had left was Thomas, my only son. I'm just going to live in this house all alone for the rest of my life? That isn't fair. How could you do that to me?
I guess that sounds about right. You can always watch your favorite movies to pass the time, I suppose. Remember, you aren't invited to our wedding. Don't even think of coming.
Wait, please, I'll do anything to make it up to you. I just didn't know anything. We all make mistakes, don't we? It was an honest mistake. I didn't mean to say things the way I did.
Well, they do say ignorance is the biggest sin, don't they? What you said to me was beyond rude, regardless of whether you like me as a person or not. There's no excuse for the way you treated me. I think you're the one that's ignorant and ill-educated the way you treat other people. In the end, we really did cut all ties with Thomas's mother and got married. We had a lovely wedding abroad and invited my family, including my parents and my grandparents, instead of his mother. Thomas invited his uncle, aunt, and cousins, all of his family members who treated him well over the years. He invited his relatives from his father's side of the family. Apparently, even they have cut ties with Thomas's mother, who they dislike for her bitter personality. Since all relatives have chosen to cut ties with Thomas's mother, she has ended up completely alone. After everything, I heard that Thomas's mother's house has become dirty and unorganized, the filth even unrecognizable from her neighbors. 18 months after we got married, I got pregnant and gave birth to twin boys. It's a busy new life I have, but I'm glad to say that I live happily with my husband and my 2 boys. I suppose that my mother-in-law will be alone and lonely for the rest of her life. If only she'd been more open-minded, she could have had a different fate.